Have you ever made a choice, a split-second decision that you knew in your gut you could never take back? My name is Frank, and for 40 years, the lonely highways of America have been my office, my home, my entire world. I've seen it all. Out here on the I-80, somewhere in the endless flatlands of Nebraska. I've seen blown tires, rusted out car parts, and more deer that didn't make it across than I care to count. But if I had known what was waiting for me inside that beat-up blue, cooler on the side of the road, I swear to you, I would have put my foot on the gas and never looked back. I would have just kept on driving straight to Chicago. Because this one trip, this one single discovery, it didn't just change my life. It put a price on my head, Dot. It was a Sunday afternoon. The kind where the sun hangs low and heavy in the sky, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. It was just me, my old Peterbilt, and a full load of lumber. A quiet, peaceful haul. The kind of trip a seasoned trucker like me doesn't even have to think about. It's all muscle memory. The hum of the engine, the feel of the road, the rhythm of the miles. You can get lost in it. You can be fooled into thinking the world is a simple, predictable place. And that's when I saw it. Just a little flash of blue against the dusty brown gravel of the shoulder, maybe 200 yards ahead. As I got closer, I could make it out. It was a cooler, a simple blue igloo cooler, sitting there all by itself like it had been deliberately tossed out of a moving car. Not my first thought. My logical thought was to just ignore it. Not my truck, not my problem. You see so much junk on the side of the road. If you stopped for every piece, you'd never get anywhere. But then that other voice started. Have you ever felt that? That little itch of curiosity you just can't scratch. The voice that says, what if? It's a dangerous voice. It's the devil on your shoulder, tempting you to step off the straight and narrow path. And on that day, in the middle of nowhere, that devil was screaming in my ear. I told myself it could be someone's medicine. Maybe a family lost their picnic lunch. I made a dozen excuses, but the truth is, I just had to know. So I slowed the big rig down, hit my blinkers, and pulled over onto the shoulder. That was my first mistake. A mistake that would ripple through my entire life. I want you to stay with me here, because what you are about to discover now might just surprise you. This isn't just a story about finding something on the side of a road. It's a story about temptation and fear and the impossible choices a regular man has to make when his back is against the wall. I swung the cab door open, and the silence of the prairie hit me. Just the low whistle of the wind. Each step I took on that gravel, crunching under my worn-out boots, felt heavier than the last. The closer I got to that cooler, the more I felt like I was walking towards something I shouldn't be. The air grew thick with a feeling I couldn't explain. Before I tell you what I found when I lifted that lid, you need to understand who I was at that moment. You need to understand the life of the man who was about to make a decision that would change everything. A man who always tried to do the right thing and was about to find out just how heavy a secret can be. Before I tell you what I found when I lifted that lid, you need to understand who I was at that moment. You need to understand the life of the man who was about to make a decision that would change everything. A man who always tried to do the right thing and was about to find out just how heavy a secret can be. See, I'm not a thief. I've never been a hero. I'm just a guy who has worked his entire life trying to be decent. My wife, Mary, God rest her soul, we built a good life together out of almost nothing. She gave me my boy, Jake, the best thing that has ever happened to me. We lost her to cancer 5 years back. It was a long, hard fight. Since then, it's just been me, this truck, and the open road, doing everything I can to make sure Jake gets through college without a mountain of debt on his back. He's a good kid, studying engineering over in Colorado, and he makes his old man proud every single day. All I've ever wanted was to provide, to pay my bills on time, and maybe have enough left over to take him fishing in the summer. I'm the guy people trust with their cargo. Frank's reliable, they say. He gets the load there on time. No fuss. I was just another honest man on another long haul. Or so I thought. You know, sharing all this with you, it's personal. And I'm telling you this because I believe that deep down, we all understand what it's like to carry a heavy load. If this story is hitting home for you at all, if you've ever felt that pressure to do whatever it takes for your family, let me know in the comments below. I truly want to hear about it. Your stories, your participation here, it's what makes this channel feel like a real community, not just me talking into the void. And if you appreciate hearing these kinds of real stories from the road, hitting that like button lets me know that this content matters. It tells me you want to hear more. Honestly, your support by subscribing to the channel is what keeps these stories alive. It allows me to share these life-changing moments with more people who might need to hear them. It really means the world to me that I appreciate you listening. Now, back to that cooler. There I was, standing on the shoulder of I-80, with the wind whipping my hair and the sun getting lower. My hand was hovering over the latch, and I could feel my pulse in my throat. I told myself I was just going to look, just satisfy that curiosity, and then I'd be on my way. I finally reached down, my fingers wrapping around the cold plastic latch. The click it made when I popped it open sounded like a gunshot in the dead silence of the prairie. I lifted the lid slowly, squinting as my eyes adjusted. And that's when my heart didn't just stop. It felt like it fell right out of my chest and onto the dusty ground dot. And that's when my heart didn't just stop. It felt like it fell right out of my chest and onto the dusty ground. The cooler wasn't full of beer and sandwiches. It wasn't full of fishing gear or tools. It was packed to the brim with stacks of cash. $100 bills wrapped tight in rubber bands, bundles of them, neat and orderly. I had never seen so much money in one place in my entire life. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I just stared, my mind a complete blank. This was more money than my house was worth, more than my truck was worth. And then, tucked into a corner, almost hidden beneath the stacks, was a small, dark velvet bag. It felt heavy for its size. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely untie the drawstring. I turned it upside down, and into my palm tumbled a handful of rocks. But these weren't just rocks. They were ugly, greasy-looking things, but they caught the last rays of the dying sun in a way that screamed only one thing to me. Raw, uncut diamonds. My mind finally kicked back into gear, but it wasn't a mind filled with joy or excitement. It was a mind filled with pure, cold terror. This wasn't just some lost money. This was something else entirely. This was organized. This was serious. My first instinct, my honest-to-God first instinct, was to slam the lid shut, throw the cooler back into the ditch, and drive away as fast as my Peterbilt would carry me. But then, an image flashed into my mind. It was my son, Jake. I saw his face, the way he worries about the cost of his tuition, the way he tries not to ask me for anything because he knows how hard I work. The entire journey of my life, since Mary passed, had been about him. It was a complete shift in my mindset, from a provider to a protector. And in that moment, looking at that fortune, the protector in me saw a solution. This wasn't just cash and rocks. This was Jake's college tuition paid in full. This was a down payment on a house for him. This was the end of his struggle before it even began. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because the decisions we make under pressure reveal our hidden truth. You see, what people don't know, the real behind the scenes of a trucker's life, is the constant financial tightrope. The medical bills from Mary's fight with cancer had wiped out every penny of our savings. I was still making payments on this rig, and every month was a struggle. The loneliness is one thing, but the constant worry, the fear that one bad breakdown or one missed load could put me under, that's a weight that never leaves you. This discovery, this revelation on the side of the road, it felt like an answer to a prayer I was too proud to ever say out loud. The angel on my shoulder was screaming at me to run, to call the state troopers, to do the right thing. But the devil on the other shoulder, he was quiet. He just pointed at the money and whispered, "Jake's name." This was the moment of transformation. The moment a simple man was faced with a choice that was anything but simple. I knew in my bones that this money belonged to dangerous people. People who wouldn't just be sad they lost it. People who would come looking for it. But the thought of Jake, of giving him the future he deserved, it was a siren's call. I did something I am not proud of. I did something that went against 40 years of being Frank the reliable, Frank the honest. With my hands still trembling, I reached in and I took one single bundle of cash. Just one, and I scooped up the velvet bag of diamonds. A finder's fee, I told myself, a small tax for my trouble. The impact of that decision was immediate. A wave of guilt and fear, so strong it almost made me sick. I quickly shoved the cash and the bag deep into the pocket of my jacket, slammed the lid of the cooler shut, and half dragged, half carried it back to my truck. Hiding it in the sleeper cab behind my bunk, I climbed back behind the wheel, my heart pounding in my ears like a drum solo. I pulled back onto the I-80, my eyes darting everywhere. Every car that passed felt like a threat. Every shadow seemed to hold a figure. I told myself to be calm, to just blend in, to just be another truck on the highway. I drove for about 15 minutes, the weight of the secret in my jacket, feeling like a physical burn against my chest. And that's when I saw it. Far back in my rearview mirror, a black Lincoln Town car. It was too far away to see who was inside, but it just seemed to be keeping pace with me. I told myself it was a coincidence. But when I eased off the gas, it eased off too. When I sped up to pass a slow-moving RV, it sped up right behind me, always maintaining the same distance. It was no coincidence. They were on me. The real journey had just begun. Comment below with the word decisions. The real journey had just begun. That black Lincoln Town car in my mirror was more than just a car. It was a shadow. It was the physical manifestation of the bad decision I had just made. Every mile I drove, it stayed there, a constant, terrifying presence. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. The casual, relaxed rhythm of the road was gone, replaced by a frantic, high-strung tension. My mind was a whirlwind of what ifs. What if they pull me over right here, in the middle of nowhere? What if they have guns? What if they know I took some of it? That last thought was the worst. The bundle of cash and the bag of diamonds in my jacket no longer felt like a solution. They felt like a death sentence. I needed to think. I needed a plan. My first instinct was to outrun them, to just put my foot to the floor and hope the old Peterbilt had enough guts to lose them. But that was a fool's move. A semi-truck against a sedan. I'd be confirming their suspicions, telling them without a word that I was guilty of something. So, I did the only other thing I could think of. I tried to act normal. I saw a sign for a big truck stop up ahead, a well-lit oasis in the growing darkness. A place with people, with cameras, with witnesses. Safety in numbers, right? I put on my signal, eased the rig into the exit lane, and pulled into the sprawling parking lot. I parked right up front, near the doors to the diner, where the light was brightest. I watched my mirrors like a hawk. The Lincoln drove right past the entrance, continuing on down the interstate. For a single glorious second, I felt a wave of relief so powerful, it almost made me dizzy. I was just being paranoid. It was just a coincidence. I killed the engine and sat there for a minute, trying to get my heart rate back to something resembling normal. I needed to get out, stretch my legs, maybe grab a cup of coffee, and try to feel like a human being again. I walked into the truck stop. The familiar smell of diesel and stale coffee, a strange comfort. I bought a coffee and a donut I had no intention of eating, and stood by the window, looking out at the rows of sleeping giants. And then my blood ran cold. A black Lincoln Town car was pulling into the parking lot. It moved slowly, methodically, down the rows of trucks like a shark circling its prey. It didn't park up front. It found a spot in the back, in the shadows near the bathrooms. There was no more doubt. They weren't just following me. They were waiting. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this is where the journey takes a turn from a simple moral dilemma into a fight for survival. This was a complete transformation of my reality. The world I knew, the one with shipping manifests and way stations, had evaporated. I was now in their world, a world with hidden rules and brutal consequences. I walked back to my truck, trying to look casual, trying not to run. Every step felt like I was walking a tightrope. I climbed back into the cab and locked the door, my mind racing. What do I do? Do I call the police now? And say what? I found a cooler full of money, and oh, by the way, I stole some of it, and now some very scary men are parked in the back lot. They'd arrest me. No, I was on my own. The impact of that realization was crushing. I had made my bed, and now I was going to have to lie in it. I watched them in my mirror. Two men got out of the car. They were wearing sharp suits, expensive shoes. They didn't look like thugs. They looked like businessmen, which was somehow even more terrifying. They walked with a purpose, their eyes scanning the lot. And then they started walking directly towards my truck. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. My hand instinctively went to my jacket, to the lump made by the cash and diamonds. The very things I had hoped would save me were now the things that were most likely to get me killed. They didn't yell. They didn't run. They just walked up to my driver's side door, as calm as you please. The older one, a man with silver hair and cold, dead eyes, he just raised his hand and knocked on my window. It wasn't an angry knock. It was a polite, almost gentle tap, and it was the scariest sound I had ever heard in my life. Right in the comments. No turning back. It was the scariest sound I had ever heard in my life. I sat there for a second, frozen. My whole body was screaming at me to hit the ignition and in. Drive through whatever was in my way. But I knew it was useless. They had me cornered. With a hand that felt like it belonged to someone else, I reached over and pressed the button to lower the window. The cool night air rushed in, carrying the smell of their expensive cologne. The older man leaned down slightly, a polite, almost friendly smile on his face. But his eyes were like chips of ice. He said, "Mr. Frank Miller, we need a word." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The fact that they knew my name sent a jolt of pure fear through me. It was colder than any winter night on the road. This wasn't a random encounter. They were prepared. I tried to play dumb, to act confused. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" My voice cracked, betraying the terror I was trying so hard to hide. The younger one, who had been silent until now, let out a short, cold laugh. It was a sound with no humor in it. He said, "We think you do. We believe you found something of ours on the side of the road a little while back. A blue cooler." My mind was scrambling. They were calm. They were in control. This was a script they had played out before. I stammered, "I don't know what you're talking about." The older man's smile never wavered. "Frank," he said, his voice dropping a little, becoming more intimate, more threatening. "Let's not make this difficult. We just want our property back. But before we take it, we do have one important question for you." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. "Did you look inside? Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this is about the truth hidden behind the facade. This confrontation wasn't about anger or violence. Not yet. It was about power. It was a psychological game, and I was losing badly. My decision to take that money, to dip my toe into their world, meant I had forfeited the right to be an innocent bystander. I was part of the story now, whether I liked it or not. The impact of that knowledge was devastating. I was no longer Frank Miller, honest trucker. I was a man with a guilty secret, and these men were professional secret keepers. They could smell my fear. They could see the lie in my eyes before I even spoke it. I shook my head, trying to look convincing. "No," I said. "I just saw it on the road. Figured someone lost it. I was going to turn it in at the next town." The two men exchanged a look. It was a brief, almost imperceptible glance, but it spoke volumes. It was a look of confirmation. They knew I was lying. The younger one stepped forward. "That's good to hear, Frank, because what's inside is very valuable. And the people we work for, they get very upset when their property goes missing. They get even more upset when people are dishonest with them." The veiled threat was crystal clear. This was my last chance to come clean. But how could I? How could I admit to taking the money and the diamonds? That would be admitting I was a thief. And in their world, what do they do to thieves? My mind was a prison. I had two choices, both of them terrible. Lie and pray they believe me, or tell the truth and face the consequences. I chose to lie. "I have no idea what's in it," I said, trying to inject some indignation into my voice. "The cooler is in the back. You can take it. I just don't want any trouble." The older man nodded slowly, as if he was considering my words. "All right, Frank. We'll take your word for it. For now." He motioned to the younger man, who walked to the passenger side of my cab. I unlocked the door, and he climbed in, moving past me into the sleeper compartment. I could hear him shifting things around. I didn't dare turn to look. I just stared straight ahead, at the brightly lit diner, at a world that suddenly felt a million miles away. A moment later, the younger man emerged, carrying the blue cooler. He got out of the truck and placed it on the ground. It was over. I thought, for one stupid, hopeful second, that it was over. Comment below with the words, "The game has changed." I thought, for one stupid, hopeful second, that it was over. The younger man carried the cooler back to their Lincoln and placed it in the trunk. He closed it softly, without a sound. Then he turned and walked back to stand beside his partner. They had what they wanted. I was expecting them to just get in their car and drive away, leaving me to deal with my pounding heart and my guilty conscience. But they didn't move. The older man was still standing by my window, that same unreadable expression on his face. He leaned in again, his voice now just a low, confidential murmur. "We appreciate your cooperation, Frank, but there's just one more thing." He let the words hang there. A new wave of dread washing over me. He said, "For your own good, this conversation never happened. You never saw a blue cooler. You never saw us. You're just a truck driver hauling lumber to Chicago. You're going to get back on the road, and you're going to forget this ever happened. Do you understand?" I nodded quickly, my head bobbing up and down like a puppet. "Yes, I understand. Crystal clear." "Good," he said. "Because we're reasonable people. We don't like complications. But if we hear that you've been talking to the police, to another trucker, to anyone, well, complications will arise. And then he delivered the final devastating blow. He said, "You have a son, right? Jake. Studies at the University of Colorado. He's a smart kid. We'd hate for him to get distracted from his studies." Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this was the moment of complete transformation. This was no longer about money or diamonds. It was no longer about a bad decision on the side of the road. This was about my son. The truth hidden behind their calm demeanor was a capacity for a kind of evil I had only ever seen in movies. The impact of his words was like a physical punch to the gut. They weren't just threatening me. They were telling me, in no uncertain terms, that they knew where my son was. They knew his name. They knew where he went to school. They had done their homework. The journey I was on had just crossed a line from which there was no return. My personal danger was one thing, but the thought of them, of these men, anywhere near my boy, it ignited a different kind of fear in me. A cold, protective rage. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to fly out of that cab and tear them apart with my bare hands. But I was powerless. My mindset had to shift instantly from fear to pure survival. I had to become an actor. I had to convince them that I was a broken, scared old man who would do exactly as he was told. I looked at him, my eyes wide, and I forced myself to whisper, "Please, leave my son out of this." The older man actually smiled, a genuine smile this time, and it was the most horrifying thing I had ever seen. "He's already out of it, Frank, as long as you keep your mouth shut. It's a simple arrangement. You stay quiet, and everyone stays safe and happy." He straightened up, adjusted the knot on his tie, and said, "It was a pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Miller." He and the younger man turned, walked back to their Lincoln as calmly as if they were leaving a board meeting, got in, and drove away, disappearing into the night. I was left there, alone in my truck, shaking so violently I could feel the hole. Cab vibrating. My mind was a blank, static-filled void. They were gone. The cooler was gone. But the threat remained, hanging in the air like poison. And then a new, even more terrifying thought wormed its way into my brain. They were gone, but I still had their money. I still had their diamonds burning a hole in my jacket. If they were thorough enough to know my son's name, they were damn sure going to be thorough enough to know exactly how much was in that cooler. They would know something was missing. And they would know who took it. Right in the comments. The price of a secret. They would know something was missing. And they would know who took it. That realization hit me like a physical blow. One had to get out of there. I fired up the engine, my movements jerky and uncoordinated. I pulled out of that truck, stopped like a bat out of hell, not caring who was watching. The open road, usually my sanctuary, now felt like the most dangerous place on earth. Every pair of headlights in my mirror was them, coming back for me. Every mile I put between me and that truck stop felt like a mile closer to my own grave. I couldn't go to the cops. I couldn't tell anyone. I was completely and utterly alone, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. The money and the diamonds in my jacket no longer represented hope or a solution. They were a ticking time bomb that my mind was a chaotic mess. I had to get rid of it. I thought about just throwing it out the window, scattering it to the wind on the dark highway. But then the image of Jake's face came back to me. The threat against him was real, whether I had the money or not. They knew who I was. They knew who he was. Giving the money back or throwing it away wouldn't change that. In for a penny, in for a pound, as the old saying goes. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. I drove through the night, fueled by black coffee and pure adrenaline. The sun came up, and I was still driving, my eyes burning, my body aching. But I couldn't stop. To stop was to let them catch up. I delivered the lumber in Chicago, going through the motions like a robot. I got my paperwork signed, got paid for the haul, and all I could think about was the illegal fortune hidden in my cab. I needed help. I needed someone I could trust. But who? My whole life was on the road. My friends were other truckers, good men, but not the kind of men you tell a story like this to. Going to the cops was suicide. They had made that clear. The threat against my family, my son, was the chain they had wrapped around my neck. Now, I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this is about the transformation from victim to something else. I realized I couldn't just run and hide. That wasn't a long-term solution. My mindset had to shift from prey to predator, or at least to something that could fight back. The truth hidden in their threats was that they expected me to be scared. They expected me to be paralyzed. The impact of their strategy was designed to make me compliant. But as the initial shock wore off, something else started to burn in its place, a slow, simmering anger. They had threatened my boy. They had brought the ugliness of their world to my family's doorstep. This was no longer just about me. The journey had to change direction. There was only one person I could call. One person from a lifetime ago who might understand the gravity of the situation. My old friend Dave. We had served in the Marines together, a lifetime ago. We had been through hell and back in places I don't even like to remember. He got out and started a private security firm in Denver. We hadn't talked in years, but he was the kind of friend you could call after a decade of silence, and he'd be there. I pulled over at a rest stop, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. His voice was the same, calm and steady. "Frank, to what do I owe the honor?" I didn't beat around the bush. "Dave," I said, my voice low and hoarse. "I'm in trouble. The kind of trouble you and I used to know about." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. And then he said, "Where are you?" I told him everything. Well, almost everything. I told him about the cooler, the cash, the diamonds. I told him about the men in the Lincoln, the confrontation at the truck stop, and the threat against Jake. The one detail I kept to myself, the one piece of the truth I couldn't bring myself to admit even to him, was that I still had a piece of their fortune. I told him I had given it all back. As I talked, I could feel a small measure of the weight lifting off my shoulders. Just saying it out loud to someone who wouldn't judge me, who wouldn't run, was a revelation. When I finished, Dave was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Frank, you didn't just stumble into a beehive. You kicked it. These aren't street thugs. This is organized. This is professional. And you're right to be scared. But we're not going to run. We're going to hit back. Write in the comments, fight back. We're going to hit back." Hearing Dave say those words sent a jolt of something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. It was a dangerous, fragile hope, but it was there. I asked him, "What do you mean?" "We can't go to the cops. They'll know." "And what about Jake?" Dave's voice was firm, the voice of a man who deals in strategy, not fear. He said, "You're right. We can't go to the cops, not yet, because these guys are probably connected. They might have eyes and ears inside law enforcement. And the first thing we do is get someone on Jake. I have a guy in Boulder, discreet, professional. He'll put a protective detail on your son without Jake ever knowing he's there. He'll be safe." Just hearing that, just knowing that there would be a shield around my boy, it was like I could breathe again. "But what about me?" I asked. "What's the plan?" Dave's plan was insane. It was terrifying, and it was the only option I had. He said, "Frank, people like this, they don't leave loose ends. They let you go because they think they have you under control. They think you're a scared old man they can use. And that's exactly what we're going to let them think. He was convinced they would contact me again. They wouldn't just threaten me and disappear. They would want to use me. A trucker with a clean record who travels the country. I was the perfect mule. And when they reached out, when they offered me a job, I was to take it. We were going to set a trap. We were going to get them on tape. We were going to document everything, and then, and only then, would we go to the feds? Not the local cops, the FBI. We'd hand them a case tied up with a neat little bow. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this was the ultimate transformation. This was the moment the journey pivoted from me being the hunted to me becoming the bait. My mindset had to evolve beyond just survival. I had to become a performer, an actor in the most high-stakes drama of my life. The truth hidden in Dave's plan was its sheer audacity. It was a long shot, a gamble where the stakes were my life. The impact of this new strategy was profound. It gave me a sense of agency, a feeling of fighting back that replaced the helpless terror I had been drowning in. The bastidors, the behind the scenes of this operation, would be just me and Dave against a powerful criminal organization. I agreed to the plan. What other choice did I have? Dave told me to go home, to try and act normal, to wait for their call. He said, when they call, and they will call, you sound scared. You sound desperate for money. You tell them you'll do whatever they want. We need them to believe they own you. The next few days were the longest of my life. I went home, parked my rig, and tried to pretend that my world hadn't been turned completely upside down. Every time the phone rang, my heart leaped into my throat. I looked out my windows 100 times a day, expecting to see a black Lincoln parked down the street. Dave called me every morning and every night to check in, his calm voice a lifeline in my sea of anxiety. He confirmed his man was in place, watching over Jake. Then, on the 4th day, the call came. It was an unknown number. I answered, my hand shaking. A calm, professional voice on the other end said, Mr. Miller, it's good to hear your voice. We have a business proposal for you. A simple delivery job. $25,000 in cash for a single night's work. I followed Dave's instructions. I stammered. I told them I was in debt, that I needed the money. I tried to sound exactly like the desperate, broken man they wanted me to be. The man on the phone sounded pleased. He said, we knew you were a smart businessman, Frank. He gave me instructions. I was to meet them at an abandoned warehouse outside of Omaha at midnight. He told me to come alone. After I hung up, I immediately called Dave. It's happening, I said. He replied, good. It's showtime. I'll meet you an hour from the location. We'll get you wired up. And Frank, remember the plan. No heroics. You're just a truck driver. That's all you are. But I knew, deep down, that wasn't true anymore. I was walking into the lion's den, and I had no idea if I was going to walk out. Right in the comments. Showtime. I was walking into the lion's den, and I had no idea if I was going to walk out. I met Dave at a dark, deserted rest stop about an hour outside of Omaha. He was all business. He had a small, high-definition button camera that he expertly sewed into my plaid work shirt. He fitted me with a tiny microphone, taping it to my chest. He said, the camera will get the visuals, the wire will get the audio. Just act natural. Don't look down at your chest. Just be Frank the trucker. Then came the hardest part. He climbed into the back of my rig, into the cargo hold, equipped with his own camera and a way to monitor my audio. He found a spot behind some stacked pallets I kept in the front, a place where he would be in complete darkness. He looked at me, his face grim in the dim light. Frank, if this goes south, if they find me, you drive. You don't stop. You don't try to be a hero. You get out of there. You understand me?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I drove the last hour to that warehouse on autopilot. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure the microphone was picking up nothing but a drumbeat of pure terror. The warehouse was exactly what you'd expect. A dark, rusting metal building at the end of a long, unpaved road, surrounded by nothing but cornfields and shadows. The same black Lincoln was there, along with a large box truck. As I pulled in, the two men from the truck stop, the same ones who had threatened me, got out of the car. The older one gestured for me to stop. I killed the engine, and the silence was deafening. I could feel Dave's presence in the back of my truck, a silent, hidden ally in this insane gamble. They didn't waste any time. They backed their box truck up to my rig and started loading sealed wooden crates into my trailer. They worked efficiently, silently, like a well-oiled machine. I just stood there, trying to look scared and useless, my mind screaming. All I could think about was Dave, hidden in the darkness just a few feet away from them. One wrong move, one cough, one sneeze, and we were both dead. After the crates were loaded, the older man walked over to me. He handed me a burner phone. He said, "You'll drive to a location just outside of Des Moines. Someone will call this phone and give you the final address. One of our associates will be riding with you to make sure everything goes smoothly." My blood ran cold. A passenger. This wasn't part of the plan. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this is about the moment when a plan collides with reality. This was a critical juncture in the journey, a complication we hadn't anticipated. My transformation into an actor had to be flawless. I couldn't show the panic that was flooding my system. The truth hidden in this new development was that they didn't fully trust me. This was a test. The impact of having one of them in my cab was immense. My every move, my every word would be scrutinized. And Dave was still hidden in the back. A younger, wiry man with cold, watchful eyes climbed into my passenger seat. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, staring out the windshield. The 2-hour drive to Des Moines was the longest 2 hours of my entire life. The silence in the cab was thick with unspoken threats. I could feel his eyes on me, watching my hands on the wheel, watching my eyes in the mirror. Every time I hit a bump, my heart seized, certain that a crate would shift in the back and they would hear something. I imagined them finding Dave and the brutal revelation that would follow. I focused on my breathing, on the road, on playing the part of a simple man in over his head. When we were about 20 minutes outside of Des Moines, the burner phone rang. I answered it. A voice gave me an address, a self-storage facility on the industrial edge of the city. I followed the directions. We pulled into the facility and a large garage door rolled open, revealing another group of men waiting inside. My passenger finally spoke. He just said, "Pull it in." I drove my rig into the brightly lit bay, my part in the drama almost over. They swarmed the truck, unloading. The crates. The man who seemed to be in charge walked up to me and handed me a thick envelope of cash. $25,000. He said, "You did a good job, Frank. We'll be in touch." He smiled. It was the same cold, empty smile I had seen before. I had done it. I had survived. We had it all on tape. Write in the comments, "The trap is sprung." I had survived. We had it all on tape. I drove out of that storage facility, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. I didn't stop until I was miles away, parked in the lot of a darkened strip mall. I practically fell out of the cab, ran to the back of the truck, and threw open the cargo door. Dave emerged from the darkness, looking exhausted but alive. He gave me a single grim nod. "We got it, Frank. We got it all." The relief was so overwhelming, it felt like a physical weight had been lifted from my soul. We didn't waste a second. We drove straight through the rest of the night to the FBI field office in Des Moines. We walked in as the sun was coming up. Two tired, ragged-looking men, and asked to speak to the agent in charge. We laid it all out for them. The video from my button camera, the audio from the wire, the footage Dave had captured from inside the trailer. We handed them the burner phone and the envelope of cash. The agents were stunned. They listened to my whole story, from finding the cooler on the side of I-80 to the delivery I had just made. They looked at the evidence, their faces a mixture of shock and professional excitement. The lead agent, a man named Harris, looked at us and said, "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've just handed us one of the biggest trafficking rings in the Midwest on a silver platter. We've been trying to get inside this organization for years." The next 24 hours were a blur of federal agents, debriefings, and endless cups of bad coffee. They put me and Dave in a safe house. They assured me that Jake was secure. And then the next morning, the dam broke. News reports were everywhere. Operation Roadblock. Dozens of arrests across 3 states. They showed pictures of the warehouse, the storage facility, the faces of the men who had terrorized me. The older man, the younger one, the silent passenger, they were all in handcuffs. They called Dave and me anonymous heroes, citizen informants whose bravery had led to the takedown of a major criminal enterprise. It was over. The threat was gone. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this is where the journey should have ended, but it didn't. This was the resolution, but it came with one final personal test. My transformation was almost complete, but there was one last piece of the old, scared Frank that I had to confront. The truth hidden in all the celebration and relief was my own secret, my own lie. A week later, after I was back home and Jake was safe, Agent Harris called me back into the office for a final debrief. He was friendly, congratulatory. He thanked me again for my courage. And then, just as I was about to leave, he looked at me with a sharp, analytical gaze. He said, "Frank, I just have one last question for you. It's probably nothing, just a loose end." During the interrogations, one of the suspects, the older gentleman you first met, he mentioned something odd. He said that when they recovered the cooler from you at the truck stop, it felt a little light. He was adamant that a bundle of cash and a small bag were missing. Harris just looked at me, waiting. The air in the room grew thick. This was it, the final revelation. The moment to confess my own crime. The moment to hand over the money and the diamonds I still had hidden in a shoebox in the back of my closet. The impact of his question was like a final, unexpected aftershock. My heart hammered against my ribs. I could feel the sweat on my palms. I thought about the lie I had told Dave. I thought about the lie I was about to tell a federal agent. I thought about the $25,000 from the delivery, which I had gladly handed over. But the first score, the finder's fee, that felt different. That felt like compensation for the hell they had put me through. I thought about Jake and the mountain of debt he was facing. I looked Agent Harris straight in the eye, and with a heart that felt like a traitor, I lied. I said, "Agent Harris, I told you everything I know. Maybe one of his own guys skimmed it off the top before I ever found it. I have no idea." He just stared at me for a long moment, his eyes searching my face. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, Frank, like I said, just a loose end. You're a hero in our book. You're free to go." I walked out of that FBI office a free man, a hero. But I was also a liar and a thief. The secret was still mine. Write in the comments, one last secret. The secret was still mine. And the question that has haunted me every single day since is, was it the right thing to do? I ask myself that every night when I'm alone on the road, with nothing but the hum of the engine and my own thoughts for company. I took that money, the bundle of cash and the small bag of diamonds, and I used it. That money paid off the last of Jake's student loans. He graduated from college, free and clear, with a great engineering job waiting for him. He started his life with a clean slate, with no mountain of debt weighing him down. He asked me where the money came from, and I lied to him too. I told him I had sold off a piece of land my father had left me years ago, something I had been saving for a rainy day. He believed me. He'll never know the truth. He'll never know the real price that was paid for his freedom. The diamonds. They're my retirement. They're my peace of mind. They're the reason I can finally sleep at night without worrying about the next big repair bill or a sudden illness. Those criminals, the men who threatened me and my son, they're behind bars for a long, long time. The world is a little bit safer because of what Dave and I did. We took a real risk, and we made a real difference. But does that justify my own crime? Did I take blood money? Or did I just collect a little cosmic justice from some very bad men who are never going to see it again anyway? Maybe the answer is both. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this is the real moral of the story. This is the truth that I've learned from this whole insane journey. Out here on the road and in life, things are rarely ever black and white. Most of the time, we live in the gray areas. We are faced with impossible decisions where there is no perfect, clean answer. My transformation wasn't about becoming a hero. It was about becoming a man who could live with the choices he made in the dark. The impact of that one decision, to take that money, has echoed through every part of my life. It gave my son a better future. It gave me a secure retirement. And it gave me a secret I will carry to my grave. My mindset has changed forever. I no longer see the world in simple terms of good and evil, right and wrong. I see it as a series of complicated choices, each with its own set of consequences. The behind the scenes of my life now includes this hidden chapter, this truth that only I know, and I've come to accept it. I did what I had to do for the person who means more to me than my own life, my own integrity, my own soul. I did it for my son, and I would do it again. The final revelation for me was that sometimes the wrong decision can lead to the right outcome, and you have to find a way to make peace with that contradiction. You have to learn to navigate the gray, because that's where most of life is lived. So I keep driving. I still haul lumber and steel and produce across this great country. But I look at the world a little differently now. I see the struggles in people's eyes. I understand the quiet desperation that can lead a good man to do a bad thing. And I am grateful. Grateful for my son's happiness, grateful for my own safety, and grateful for the second chance I was given, even if it came at a cost. That blue cooler on the side of the road, it was a curse, and it was a gift. It was a test. And I'm still not sure if I passed or failed. Write in the comments, a shades of gray, and I'm still not sure if I passed or failed, but I am here, and I am at peace. And maybe, in the end, that's all that really matters. So that's my story, the whole unvarnished truth of it. Thank you for riding along with me and for listening. It means more than you know to be able to share it. If you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer. You're part of this journey with me. Let me know you're here by writing in the comments. I'm with you to the end. It's incredible to see who sticks around for the whole story. And if this story resonated with you, if you felt that connection, hitting that like button is the best way to let me know. It truly helps more than you can imagine. If you want to hear more stories from the road, more real-life accounts of the choices and challenges we all face, then I invite you to subscribe to the channel. I share these stories because I believe they matter, and by subscribing, you ensure these messages continue to be heard. There's another story waiting for you, right here on the screen. It's about a different kind of choice, a different kind of test on a lonely stretch of highway. I think it's the perfect next chapter to this one. Just click on it, and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, stay safe out there, and keep your eyes on the road ahead. You never know what you'll find.